Awareness is a form of learning, depending on the meaning of the word awareness and the meaning of the word learning. At first, when wrestling with this question, one might ask what exactly is meant by the word awareness. I assumed it has much more to do with metacognition than it does any of the other definitions, bodily awareness, spiritual awareness, and Buddhist traditions, etc., stated in most of the searches that I did in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and at Google Scholar. Since Noddings was not clear about that, I did a bit more digging. In the context of the use of the word awareness, if the context of the use of the word awareness lies in the debate in Noddings, pages 48 and 49, about whether or not a teacher is actually teaching if a student does not learn, including Dewey's analogical stance that teaching and learning is akin to buying and selling, and Scheffler and Smith's so-called standard thesis, the first of the three criteria of teaching being that the teacher intends, keyword, intends to bring about learning. However, Paul Commissar's rejection of even this notion is telling and points us toward what he means by awareness. He gives a list of what he calls teaching or intellectual acts, quote unquote, demonstrating, explaining, hypothesizing, interpreting, etc., that these are, quote, used by teachers with the intention to make their students aware, not to produce particular bits of learning, unquote. Noddings, page 49. This indicates that awareness in this sense means a sort of what I call getting it in a general sense. But what I found interesting in the Journal of Educational Thought, volume 16, number 2, August 1982, page 67, is that Commissar completely divorces the idea of whether or not a student gets it or is actually made aware completely from the act of teaching itself. Typically, analytic philosophers' answer to the question, does teaching imply learning, is an emphatic no. However, according to the GET article, for Commissar, quote, the most precise concept we have of teaching is one to which the term learning is not even referred, unquote. Commissar continues saying, quote, if the teacher has taught, then the students have been made aware. If the students have not been made aware, then there has been no teaching, unquote. So awareness then, to many an analytical philosopher, is not a form of learning per se, if my understanding of this research is correct, but rather is the first step to a child truly understanding, which is completely divorced from whether or not a teacher is, quote unquote, teaching. Noddings says that Dewey would likely agree with Commissar to a point. The child at some point is responsible for learning. It is a two-way street, as she points out at the bottom of page 49. And though Commissar's sometimes complicated definitions of teaching and learning have the tone of a lawyer trying to get his teacher-client off the hook by severing the connection completely between teaching and quote-unquote learning, Commissar states the following, quote, one cannot say, I see you are explaining X to John, but is John understanding X? If you are explaining to John, then John is getting it. The idea of doing as separate from succeeding does not enter here. Doing is succeeding, unquote. Commissar said that, and it really does make a lot of sense. It's a very strong point to be made here. Being made aware by a teacher is a form of learning then, a first step, as I've said.